So good afternoon now. And we're on the downhill side of this conference. Yeehaw, right? Sadly, you have to put up with me a little bit longer, but and we're in a topic that you think that, oh my goodness, excise tax again. Well, you may partially have your county treasurer to blame for excise tax again, because at their conference gave a presentation, excise tax presentation, a lot of which this one is almost identical to that one, a little bit more added to this one. Your role in excise tax is a little bit more than the treasurer, but the reason I say you may have them to blame partially for this is that I must have been coming across pretty forceful in my presentation to the treasurers, because almost verbatim it was worded to me that, are you going to give this same lecture to the county auditors? I said, well, we'll probably have an excise tax presentation, and I said I didn't realize I was lecturing, but yeah, there'll no doubt be a presentation. But before I get started, the handouts, obviously, hopefully you have a handout that's a copy of this presentation I'm going to give, and then we had included on the Board of Accounts website some other handouts, an example of an excise tax ledger. It's just a kind of a recommended format to the layout of an excise tax ledger. And then another document that is it gives you a picture of the flow of the different vehicle taxes, and so hopefully you found those on the website, and hopefully they'll be of use to you. So on to the exciting world of excise tax. I should be more enthusiastic up here, shouldn't I? I'm supposed to be the leader. But before I go on to excise, I do want to mention one thing, and this relates to this morning in circuit breaker. And this is something you may already realize and know, but on your abstract, whenever there is circuit breaker, on the abstract, the amounts that are in the sections 2 through 4 of the abstract, and there is circuit breaker, those amounts shown there are the fund amounts after the circuit breaker has been deducted. So those fund amounts are net of the circuit breaker, if you have circuit breaker. Also, if you have circuit breaker, then chances are you're going to have adjusted property tax rates that we will be calculating and providing to you, and then we'll also be updating the tax rates in the abstract to those adjusted rates. And so then when you get the abstract from us, the Excel worksheet, when you get that from us, after we've entered the adjusted tax rates, the fund amounts shown in sections 2 through 4 will be already be the amounts that have been adjusted for the protected fund adjustments that have to be made. And so that you know that those amounts are already after those circuit breaker adjustments. So this afternoon, the excise tax topics that I'm going to go over, going to talk about the excise tax accounting, partially in kind of a philosophical and theory standpoint, and then actually talk about the posting of the excise tax to the county treasurer records and county auditor records. Mention real quickly, just so that you know, you probably already know, where all the different sources of excise tax, what are those sources. Talk about the Bureau of Motor Vehicles reporting. Talk about, as already mentioned, the accounting on the treasurer's records and the accounting on the auditor's records. talk in general terms about excise tax settlement and distribution, then switch over and discuss the excise surtax and wheel tax, and then wrap it up with the excise tax cut replacement distributions, how those are calculated, and for the months, and particularly how it's calculated for December, since I threw a little twist to you last December, and to let you know that that's going to continue to be the way that December is calculated. So what I like, the foundation, if you will, for good excise tax accounting, or as I call it here, solid excise accounting, is accomplished by leaving no gaps. And gaps are whenever excise transactions occur and they're not accounted for. And on the treasurer's side, there must be all deposits, receipts, and disbursements and adjustments of excise tax must be posted to the cash book. And on the auditor's side, all of the receipts, disbursements, and adjustments need to be or must be posted to the excise tax ledger. And it is very advisable that the treasurer and auditor reconcile your excise balances monthly. You must do it at settlement time or the settlement isn't approved. And that key to maintaining this reconciliation is for you to do timely accounting and have good communications between the treasurer and auditor's office. And so you think, well, duh, yeah, all that makes sense. That's pretty common sense stuff. But believe me, that isn't exactly what happens, and because of this, there are problems. Balances on the treasurer side and the auditor side get out of sync, and then when it's discovered they are out of sync, and so much time has gone by that it becomes impossible to get them back in sync, and then we have to allow you to do an adjustment to bring things back together. If you account for the excise daily, monthly, at least monthly, on the treasurer and auditor side, and at least monthly, or really monthly is most frequently need to do it. We found instances where, well, we don't record that. Like, why don't you record that? And so these are just the things you got to do routinely. It's boring, but as long as it's done routinely, then you usually never have any problems with reconciling excise. The next several slides are just going through, and I'll go through them rather quickly, and just telling you what the sources of the excise are, or is, in the Bureau of Motor Vehicles for the vehicle excise tax, and the Bureau of Motor Vehicles for the excise surtax and wheel tax, and then they collect, I should say, they collect these taxes, and they collect the watercraft or boat excise and the education plate fees. Department of Revenue, they collect wheel tax through their motor carrier division, because their motor carrier division, it handles registrations of semis and trucks. They also collect the aircraft excise, and they collect the auto rental excise. The auditors state, we distribute to you the boat excise and the education plate fee and the excise tax cut replacement. The Bureau of Motor Vehicles, they deposit to the treasurer's bank account daily the motor vehicle excise tax that is collected and the motor vehicle excise surtax and wheel tax that is collected for the counties that have adopted those taxes. In the state treasurer's account, the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, they deposit the motor or the watercraft excise and the education plate fees. And the Department of Revenue, the money they collect, they deposit with the state treasurer. The Bureau, as part of their processes, they put out on their FTP site daily the vehicle registration text files and the vehicle registration report, that's the hard copy report, and an auditor's copy, and then an assessor's copy. And then they also put out there a deposit report for the money that's deposited each day. The files out on their FTP site have a file name. There is a structure to that file name. Then the structure is that the first two numbers equals the county number. This is an example of the file name for Benton County on February 28th of 2013. The first two numbers, 04, indicate that it's Benton County. The next numbers identify the report type. The third number is, and number 1 is an indicator for the vehicle registration report. The 4th through the 7th number is the year, so 2013, and then the 8th and 9th number identifies the month, in this case 02, and the 10th and 11th the day, which is the 28th. And then the final numbers in that file name are just a sequential numbers. The text file on the vehicle registration information is a computer readable format, and this text file is what enables your software to use to determine the taxing district allocations of the motor vehicle excise tax and lottery credit. Vehicle registration, the vehicle registration and motor vehicle excise tax information in the report format, the auditor's copy, it's just in a report format that you can visually see and determine the taxing district totals and also it has the lottery credit reported by taxing district total. So for those counties, which I'd hope are not many, if any, that use the hard copy report to separate out the excise tax into the taxing districts, this is the report that you would use. Hopefully you're using the text file and feeding it into either a vendor provided or your in-house developed program that does the allocations for you. Then the assessor copy of the registration report, it has the excise surtax and wheel tax that if your county has that, then for all counties, it contains the registration information for the vehicles that are exempt from motor vehicle excise tax, which are very few anymore. The deposit report, that's that single page report that shows you what was deposited for the day to the treasurer's bank account, the excise, the wheel tax, the surtax, and the total. I've put in here out to the side, like the type of receipt form would be used for each. On the treasurer's side, the excise tax is the treasurer's receipt. The wheel tax and the surtax should actually be quoted directly into your wheel tax and excise surtax fund. And then the total is the amount that the treasurer should be recording as a deposit to the bank on their cash book. These are the report. This report is what should be used as the basis for the treasurer's receipting and the auditor's quietus and to the cash book. So the flow of this information to the treasurer's records is the Bureau of Motor Vehicles deposits daily to the county's BMV bank account, the excise tax, and if it applies, the surtax and wheel tax that was collected 14 days earlier. And then the treasurer should, at least monthly, preferably daily, enter to the cash book the Bureau of Motor Vehicles collections, and the total collections entered to the bank on the treasurer's cash book, the treasurer's receipt issued for the excise tax and entered to the excise account on the cash book. And then if you have the excise surtax and wheel tax, then it's quietus to the auditor's wheel tax and surtax fund. And this is then entered into the funds ledger section of the treasurer's cash book, and also into the auditor's funds ledger. So this is something that has to occur, should be occurring at least monthly. That and this is one area where we're finding that the bank account that the treasurer has for the Bureau of Motor Vehicles money, we found where it's not on the cash book whatsoever. That's certainly not acceptable. And that the excise tax only comes on to the treasurer's record and a treasurer's receipt issued, and a quietus for the wheel tax and surtax only happens whenever the treasurer moves money out of the Bureau of Motor Vehicle bank account into the county's general bank account, and finding that's the only time it shows up on the cash book, and that's not acceptable. That bank account. So there's a bank account out there. What happened? There's a bank account out there with county money in it, but it's not shown on the county records, and that we found to be the case in some instances, and that's not acceptable. The other thing is that the basis for recording the money on the cash book for the excise tax or the bank balance on the cash book is being based entirely on the bank statement received on that bank account. And so whatever the bank statement says is what gets recorded in the cash book, but as opposed to using the Bureau of Motor Vehicles the daily deposit reports. If you use the daily deposit reports as you're recording to the cash on the cash book and the bank account, if you use those, and then when you receive the bank statement, you do a bank reconciliation to that on the cash book, then you have your check and balance, and you're doing your auditing as to ascertaining that, what the Bureau told us they were going to put in the bank is what ended up in the bank. When you just take the bank statement as your basis, then you've not done any verification of the amounts that the Bureau said they were going to put in your bank account. So you missed that check and balance there by doing that. And so those are two reasons why we have a problem with, and I think the Board of Accounts is with us here, a problem with that money only appears on the cash book when you're moving it out of there. That's big time bad. That bank account's never on the cash book. That's not good. And we have a problem by using simply the bank statements as the recording device. And that's not good because you don't have any kind of a check and balance and reconciliation going on. So, there was my lecture. but that's why I think, well, the treasurer didn't like me. But those are the things that were not good, and we've located and found. And found by asking questions, and keep asking questions as to, when we're trying to make sense out of when is this money coming on to the treasurer's records, and what's your background, and then finally, if you ask enough questions, then you get the answer of, well, whenever we move the money out of the bank. Okay. So that bank deposits must be on, or that bank must be listed in the bank deposits section of the cash book, and the increases to the bank balance should be those deposit reports, and there should be at least a monthly reconciliation to the bank statement and the balance on the cash book. The Department of Revenue, via the Auditor of State's Office by check or ACH, they distribute the aircraft excise quarterly to the county, and the auto rental excise semi-annually to the county, and the wheel tax to the county monthly. And I have here check or ACH. I'll take a moment here to tell you some things that are going on in our office in regards to our vendor records for counties, in that we have over the years for a long time, and for a long time I've been wanting us to take care of this, and it's now happening, or about to happen. We've had multiple vendor records for each county. Which is kind of crazy. You guys are only one county, you know. Now, you have, of course, money that goes directly to the clerk, and you have money that goes directly to the recorder and directly to the sheriff. So we need to build the ability to do that. But we have the ability within our vendor records to make that division, and we have the ability in our vendor record to have the bank account for each of those offices in our single vendor record. And so we are, we as an office, our AP department especially, and then we're helping them with it. We are then taking those multitude of vendor records and consolidating them into one vendor record, and then we're gathering the bank account information from the clerks and the sheriffs and the recorders, and you've probably already heard in your county probably some rumblings from the recorder and the clerk and all, and the sheriff wanting to know why, what's this all about. But what this is all about is that going forward, whenever the Department of Revenue, backing up a little bit, for whatever reason, the Department of Revenue has always been in a habit of picking the vendor record that didn't include electronic funds transfer. And now with this one single vendor record, and with us trying to get the bank information for each of the offices, from now on, here in the next few months, the Department of Revenue, the excise tax that they collect and send to the county, it should be coming to you by a electronic funds transfer, just like you get for the distributions from like MVH and Road and Street from me or us. These other monies will be coming, and just like it is with the MVH and Road and Street and the other distributions, there will be an email with the remittance advice, identifying the money and the date of the deposit and all. So we're trying to move entirely to ACH deposits with county records, and then the next step is on to cities and towns with the same thing. And as you've heard, there's a little bit of a chance that I may not be there a whole lot longer, so I imagine somebody else will get to do the city and town business. But we're going to get the counties cleaned up. The treasurer will issue a receipt for this aircraft and auto rental excise. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yes, the question is, will they have the different bank accounts as they do now? And yes, they will. And, what do you mean by change? Well, the way the vendor record structure is, it doesn't allow us to divide that up. Then, so when, well, you can do anything. You can do anything within the framework, okay? And the framework doesn't allow us to do that. So you will have to you will have to look and see whether or not it applies to you. If it doesn't, then throw it away. There is not, we cannot change that part. So for excise, the treasurer issues a receipt, then and posts that to other sources on the cash book. For the wheel tax and excise surtax, that should be quieted directly into the wheel tax and excise surtax fund, and will be shown in the funds ledger section of the county treasurer's cash book. This is, the chances are this is something different. There has been where the county treasurers have been issuing receipts, and it's going into the other sources, and then later it's then transferred over to funds ledger by quietus. The preferred method is just to quietus it directly into the wheel tax and excise surtax fund. The reason is that we have learned and found that some of the problems with the fact that the excise balance in the excise ledger for the auditor and the excise on the treasurer's cash book differ is because the excise or the wheel tax and excise surtax the treasurer has put on the excise line of the cash book, and that has caused problems and confusion, and then having to sort that out after the fact. It's much cleaner that whenever the money is going to get posted into the records, that it just be quietus directly to the fund. Our money to you flow in the treasurer's records. The treasurer issues a treasurer's receipt for that, for the excise watercraft or boat excise tax. The education plate fee money is quietus directly to, or should be quietus directly to, the county auditor's education plate fee fund. And then also the excise tax cut replacement money that we send to the county a treasurer's receipt is issued for that and recorded in the other sources section of the cash book. So the county auditor should have an excise tax ledger to record all of the different excise taxes, and including the lottery credit and the excise tax cut replacement distributions. The structure should be that there's a separate ledger or subsidiary ledger for each taxing district, and a controller summary ledger containing the sum of all the separate taxing district ledgers. And each of the separate ledgers should have a separate column or be structured in a manner that enables the separate postings of the motor vehicle excise and the boat excise, watercraft, and the auto rental, and the lottery credit, and the excise tax cut replacements. Within that taxing district ledger, the postings should be segregated by month, and there should be monthly totals and a cumulative or running total. And if the guidance that I give for posting is that the posting month is going to vary by the excise type. For the vehicle excise and the lottery credit, I recommend that the posting date be determined by the transaction date and not by the report date and deposit date. The report date and the deposit date are 14 days after the transaction date. And so, for example, an April 14th reported transaction and April 14th deposited transaction, that is actually for March 30 excise tax and lottery credit transaction, and so it should be posted in the ledger as March excise. The reason is that this will make the reconciling with the treasurer more simple, but it really will help when it comes to allocating the excise tax cut replacement distributions, because we base those distributions, and the calculations of those distributions are based on the transaction date and not on the deposit date. And so when we send you a excise tax replacement distribution for the month of March, it's going to include the money that was reported to you on April 14th and deposited on April 14th, because that was for a March transaction, and the reports that come over to us from the Bureau of Motor Vehicles for the excise replacement distribution calculation, the reports that come over to us for March is going to include that transaction that had a report day of April 14th. And so to be able to do a one-on-one with your ledger, then that really ought to be recorded as a March transaction. And all of this has to be taken into consideration whenever you're reconciling with the treasurer, because you know, what you have recorded as a March is actually a April 14th deposit to the treasurer. On the other excise tax that you receive, the watercraft and the aircraft and auto rental, and those are posted in the month received. Then you should at least monthly be posting to the county auditor excise tax ledger, and in the taxing district ledgers, the motor vehicle excise tax, and typically, you know, if you're using software to divide up or allocate the money from the Bureau of Motor Vehicle files into your different taxing districts, you know, I would think typically you're only running that once a month. And so that would be when you would be posting to your excise ledger, and that would be considered timely reporting or timely posting. Those BMV reports that are on the FTP site, they can and should be copied to the county's network or county's computers. But never, ever, ever move those reports off onto your network. Just copy them. If you move the reports, they're gone from the Bureau of Motor Vehicle site and won't be there ever again. And if something would happen at your system to lose those files, corrupt those files, or whatever might happen, you have no backup. And so in order to ensure that you've got a backup plan in place, you want to copy those files over. Do not move them. Our distribution to you on the monthly excise tax cut replacement, your basis for posting that is going to be the amounts that that we've distributed to you, obviously, and our monthly instructions and the motor vehicle registration data. And that registration data is what you're going to use to allocate the distribution, and you will have allocated the lottery credit that was on the BMV data. You will allocated that to the taxing district. You have to allocate it so that you have a basis to then allocate the replacement distribution. And there again, you know, the data you can use is either the text data or the actual reports themselves, and doing it manually. But I wouldn't want to do it manually. And here in a little while, I'm going to cover how the mechanics of how those excise replacement distributions are calculated. Then whenever you get our watercraft excise, you will, basis of your posting for that is our distribution amount and the Bureau of Motor Vehicle watercraft registration data that's out there on the FTP site. And there again, you can either use the text file or the actual reports. whenever you receive from us, the Department of Revenue, watercraft and auto rental excise, that'll be posted to your ledger at the time you receive it. And the basis for allocating it to the taxing districts will be the Department of Revenue information that they've given you. And so on the monthly reconciliation between the treasurer and auditor, I'm suggesting that you would use the auditor and treasurer excise tax reconciliation worksheet that we provide at settlement time as your guide. Those same items of the pluses and minuses that come in play at settlement time would be the same that would be coming in play on a monthly basis. You know, if you get started doing a monthly reconciliation, well, if you haven't been doing monthly reconciliations, the first one's going to be a tough one because it's going to be basically like doing it at settlement time because you got to get caught up to speed to get a beginning point. And then if you then continue to do the monthly reconciliation, then the settlement reconciliation is going to be a piece of cake because it's basically only going to be a monthly reconciliation because you've already done it for the other 5 months. Settlement, stating the obvious here again, what amounts of excise you're including in settlement. The amount you're going to include in settlement is going to be the amount that's on your ledger as of your excise cutoff date. Cutoff date should be at the end of a month. And remember that the recommendation is that you're using transaction dates and not reported or deposited dates. So in other words, if you're cutting off at the end of September, you're actually looking at the money that was reported to you up to October the 14th. And for most counties, the cutoff dates have been in the past April 30 for June and October 31 for December. But we've recommended for the last couple years, since the Bureau changed to a 14-day lag time, that you may want to seriously consider moving those dates to March 31 and September 30. I think some counties, if not many, have already done that. It makes life much easier come settlement time because you could actually be right now having wrapped up your excise reconciliation for the December settlement and not have to wait and try to do it while you have a turkey leg in one hand and a pencil in the other in November. So it's easier now. You're going to use our reconciliation worksheet, determine if there are any differences, and there will be differences. You know, when we see a reconciliation worksheet submitted with settlement that has zero difference, it's very suspect. We don't expect a zero difference, but we do expect a difference that can be explained or reconciled away, that it's due to timing, but we don't expect a zero difference. Another thing that is quite suspect, that when we see a reconciliation worksheet and the difference is equal to 3 and 4 months of excise tax, and then on the next line that you have in there that was money the treasurer received after the cutoff date. Well, you know, wasn't born yesterday. If that difference equals 6 months of excise, you didn't get 6 months of excise in the last 45 days. So those are things, you know, we see that it's hard to call you on that because you don't want to say that you're fibbing. But on the other hand, you know, how can you explain away that difference is 5 months of excise, you know? But so, you know, We're thinking while we look at those sheets, aren't we, Brenda? But you don't think, okay, well, heaven forbid you get me to look at your settlement, because I look at those sort of things. But anyway, and then I miss other things. So and what we want the treasurer certifying is, we want the treasurer certifying what was on the cash book the day they did the certification. So if they did the certification on November the 20th, then we want what was on the cash book on November 20th. And some want to make it more difficult than that. I don't know why, because you should be able to reconcile back to whatever date it is. I mean, if you cut off at the end of September on your excise, and then the treasurer certifies on November 20, then the differences are going to be the excise that the treasurer received from October 15th through November 20th. That's acceptable. I mean, that's what it should be. And then whatever you did with the excise tax cut replacement, that could work in there somewhere. But if you're cutting off at the end of September, and which is actually money deposited up through October the 14th, treasurer certifying on November the 25th, and your excise for the 6-month settlement period from the last settlement to now that you're distributing is $2.5 million, and the timing difference amount that's on the reconciliation is $775,000. No, I don't think so. I mean, you didn't get 775 in the last 45 days if 6 months was $1.5 million. So, but that's the sort of things that we look at. But and the reconciliation, it's just another kind of given, is just a matter of knowing what is in the number that's in the excise ledger, and knowing what the amount is on the treasurer's cash book in excise. And the differences should be just a matter of what's in one amount and not in the other. And as long as the amounts are one of the items on the reconciliation worksheet, and it reconciles to zero, we're all good. But I'd want to have a footnote here. It can be one of the items on the reconciling worksheet, but it needs to be a reasonable amount on that. And then what you're distributing is what's in your ledger, excise ledger, minus the welfare and school allocations, and the excise to be distributed is what you're entering in the column on the 49cc, and also what you're entering into your tax apportionment tax system. The thing that has to be done is on your ledger, whatever excise tax amount was included in the settlement, you must deduct that on your excise ledger so that you've got a correct balance going forward. And that total amount that's deducted is quietus to the settlement fund, and the treasurer is going to post on the cash book based on the quietus the reduction in the excise tax account on the cash book, and we'll also post that quietus to the funds ledger on the cash book. Excise surtax and wheel tax, the Bureau of Motor Vehicles tax deposits and the Department of Revenue wheel tax distributions should be quietused into either a separate fund for excise surtax and wheel tax, or that could be one combined fund. I'd recommend one combined fund because the amounts are distributed the same. Then you're going to be distributing that money monthly to the county highway fund and to the cities and towns within the county. And you're using the local road and street distribution formula to calculate that. The local road and street distribution formula, it allocates the money between the county and cities and towns on a basis of a combination of road and street miles and population, and the total population of the county determines the percentage allocated by the population of road miles. And so for counties that have a population of 50,000 or less, 20% of the money you allocate between the county and the cities and towns by population, 80% you allocate by road miles. And then with counties with a population greater than 50,000, it's 60% allocated by population and 40% by road and street miles. And annually, we provide you an update to the populations and mileage. Whenever we update those, we send you a worksheet showing you the new population and mileage numbers. And if you want, we have a worksheet that you can use to calculate the distributions. Okay, the mechanics of the excise tax cut replacement distributions. That the Bureau gives us the lottery credit information and the registration data that they provide to the county auditors. You use that registration data to allocate the lottery credit amount to your taxing districts, and you must post a monthly credit amount in the excise ledger. We use that lottery credit data to calculate the excise tax cut replacement percentage, and we determine the amount to distribute to the county by applying that percentage to the county's total lottery credit for the month. So the total we have for your county for lottery credit for the month should be the same total that you have in your excise ledger. And that would be one of your checks that you need to make, our information against yours when we send you the distribution. And you will then take our percentage that we provide you against those lottery credits by taxing district to allocate the excise tax cut replacement distribution. And so that tax cut replacement percentage will always equal the lesser of 100% or the state excise tax cut replacement monthly appropriation amount divided by the statewide total lottery credit amount. That monthly appropriation amount, the state appropriation, is the $19,684,370. So what this means is that the maximum we will distribute in excise tax cut replacement for a month in total, the maximum we're going to distribute is, I gave you just the BIF amount, the total is the $19,701,344. It's made up of a portion of a general fund appropriation, which is $16,974, and a Build Indiana Fund appropriation, which was the number I gave you earlier, the $19,684,370. So the total, the $19,701,344 is the total we'll distribute in any one month during the months of January through November. If we have a month where the total of the statewide lottery credit money or lottery credit for the month is less than that 19.7 million, then whatever amount of the 19.7 million we don't distribute, we set aside and we're going to include it in the December distribution. So backing up, we take the 19.7 million, we divide it by the total lottery credit for the month reported to us by the Bureau, and we do that division, and we determine what percentage of the total the 19.7 is, and if it's 70%, then we will distribute to every county 70% of your lottery credit for the month, and then you'll use that 70% to apply in your ledger the amounts to your tax districts. Then that's what we do January through November. Then in December, the first thing we do is we then determine what the excise tax cut replacement percentage is for the calendar year. And we do that by taking the calendar year, the total appropriation, and divide it by the calendar year total statewide lottery credit. And the calendar year total appropriation is that 19.7 million times 12, or $236,416,128. And that we divide into that the total credit amount, lottery credit for the year. And so if we determine then that when we do that division that the percentage is 68%, then 68% is the amount of the total credit that's going to be replaced. And that's what we do in the second step. Then in the third step, we take, well, let's back up a little bit. We take that percentage times the calendar year total for each county, and we determine then the total lottery credit that's going to be replaced for each county. So every county, whatever that percentage is, that's the percentage we're going to replace for every county. And so whatever Marion County's total is for the year, we take it times 68%, and that gives us a dollar amount to replace for Marion County. And we take 68% times Randolph County, and that's Randolph counties, and so forth and so on. And then our next step is we sum up what we've already distributed to Marion County January through November, and we subtract that from the amount we calculated, and the difference is what we're going to send in December. And that's the same formula we use for every county, is we take the 68% we calculated, subtract out the total of the January through November, and the result at the end is the December excise tax cut replacement amount. And then we sum all that up and make sure that we're coming back in total. And usually we'll see we need to make a couple pennies adjustment, and we pick on Whitley County since they're last in the list to make our penny adjustment too, plus or minus. And so it's so that it all comes out. When you get the money from us, you're going to go through the same mechanics. We're going to tell you what the percentage for the year was. You're going to take that times the lottery credit for each taxing district total for the year. And then you're going to, that will give you the amount for total for the year. And then you're going to subtract from that the sum of your January through November distributions. And the differences is what you're going to put in the excise ledger for your December amount. And then you also need to sum that up to make sure you come back in total. You may be a penny or two rounding difference, and you just adjust one of your taxing districts by that penny. And so we both are using the same mechanics, and that's how we did the December distribution last year. That's how we're going to do the December distribution this year. I've learned that from some counties that the structure of how you're doing this requires your county to have a separate December and final distribution. If you do, my suggestion is that you feed into the system that the December amount was zero, and then your final is this what we're giving you as the December. That'll work. And but if that's how you have to do it in your system, but we're going to stick with this for a couple reasons. One, this is actually what the statute says for us to do. We weren't doing it this way before because we were for a while, and we could have switched over a few years ago, but didn't yet. We weren't before because there seemed to always be some stragglers with BMV reporting and a lottery credit at the end, and we weren't comfortable, or me wasn't comfortable with that. The final was the final, and so I made the two separate distributions. But that's how that works. Here's where I tell you about if you have to process two separate ones, a December and a final, that I would recommend that you consider the December $0 amount distributed and then process our distribution, our December distribution, process that as the final. So there were some other handouts, as I mentioned at the beginning, that were out on the website. And those were just examples of a structure of a ledger and then a flow chart, which you may have already have the flow chart from previous presentations, and also the ledger that there was similar type of presentation here a couple years ago on this. And